let's unpack that for a second. There's a whole lot there, both for the public, for the professional as well. And I mean, we've talked a lot about this. I've known you for a little bit over a year now. Luckily we sat next to each other at a gala dinner and had a great conversation about this. Got you into the Independent Finance Brokers Forum to speak and to educate the profession on this. It had my eyes open, and I've been in this profession for over 20 years and hadn't ever really thought about this. So let's go back to the individual and let's put a little bit more context and even maybe use an example of a woman who is being financially coerced and may not actually realize it. Give me an example of that. Let's use an example where maybe it isn't a relationship breakdown or something like that. Let's just say married couple, and in your example there where maybe, typically our society is defined by traditional roles. Women often are staying at home, looking after kids, raising family, doing those things, and the men go out and work. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's oftentimes what happens.
It's general.
And the woman might say to the husband, look, you're in charge of the money and doing those things. You earn it, you look after the bills, and I'm going to look after the family, the house, raising the kids and doing those, those things. So you're in charge of that. I'm in charge of this.
Have many of them.
Pretty typical example, I would think. Yeah? Okay.
So
then how would she potentially be being coerced? Maybe they don't even realize it. Run me through an example there, because I think this will be interesting. Most people listening to this will probably not have thought about what you're about to say.
Well, I have a woman. She was in her 60s, and she had been married they'd been together for over 40 years. And what had occurred is that they had separated. Now they were going through the process of family court and everything else. And during that time, when it was the financial disclosure, the interesting thing was that she had no idea. She wasn't even on title. She had spent all her life raising kids, looking after everything, while her husband got the career, got the status. And when it came to it, the hardest part of this was the emotional awareness of it. When you asked her the questions of where are your title deeds, where are your statements, and everything else that she was meant to provide, she was stunned because she couldn't move. She had received an allowance, thinking that was just normal. She received an allowance on a credit card. Never questioned anything at all. What had happened then, it also opened her eyes that she never was involved in anything. She ran the household. Sounds like it doesn't happen these days, but it happens a lot. She ran the household, had money to spend on what she needed for the kids and herself, but had nothing else. Everything was managed by her partner, the family trust and everything that was structured. She was excluded. She wasn't even on title of the property where they lived. And it sounds really bizarre. You'd think surely she would know. Couldn't be possible. It actually was, because it was one of those things that whenever they bought properties or whatever happened, he made all the decisions. He would tell her what was going on. He would show her. But what happens behind the doors of various facilities and organisations is totally different. She never questioned. That happens to a lot of women. They don't question it. They don't ask the right questions. And even when they do suspect or they feel like they're not being told everything, they still believe the partner. They don't have that in them to actually ring up the bank, ring up the organisation, call the lawyer, keep people accountable, get them to explain. The difficulty and the sadness in this situation was when you hear the explanation, you hear the story, and you hear the love and the dedication she had, where she feels like her whole life has been betrayed. And they seem to have a really good, normal, healthy relationship. So that happens a lot. You want another example?
Absolutely. If you have another one.
Another example is when a woman who was quite educated, very professional, she had been married for a substantially long time. She was the one that earned a lot more money in the relationship, and he had managed to obtain finance like normal. They got the home loan and everything else, but he was actually getting more finance for his business as well, and she was a guarantor. His business failed. What she didn't realise is that she was also nominated as the director of the business well before it actually went into administration. She had no idea. So she faced not only the administrators, the investigations, and so on and so on. She found herself doubting her own abilities because she was a professional. She had no idea of the amount of documentation that she didn't have access to and now really needed because she was the director. So that one in itself was difficult. But these things happen a lot where women just they're oblivious to it. Are you really going to say, hey, I don't believe you, can you show me the documents? And if you don't know what you're signing, are you really going to say, well, maybe I'm going to call my own lawyer? You just don't do that. There's other ways that we can address it, but you just don't do that in a relationship. So it becomes easy to manipulate that situation. And it happens to men too, but in these cases, it was women that were so unsuspecting. And this had nothing to do with domestic violence in a sense of, I'm going to take that back, I retract that. It is abuse.